Hare Krishna. Today is an auspicious day. Today is the disappearance of Srila Sanatana Gosvami, the most senior of the six Goswamis. It's also Guru Purnima, and it's the first day of Chaturmasya. So it's auspicious in many ways. So we're going to sing the lament for the disappearance of pure devotees. Ye Anila Premadana. Ye Anila Premadana Karuna Raju He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a great personality as Srinivas Acharya gone?
Where was Guru Govardhana? Where is Sanatana? Where is Bhagavatam?
Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopala Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go?
Smash my head against the rock. Went into the fire. You know what I find Guru Govardhana?
In unable to attend the assassination of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of his relatives, in his assassination he performed his pastime. Narottam Das simply leaves.
So, the significance of these days, there are so many reasons why we glorify the pure devotees. And Sanatana Goswami happens to be such an exalted personality. He was the oldest of the Goswamis and respected and loved by everybody because he had all those wonderful qualities that these pure devotees have. So much humility, such a dedication to Krishna, to study, to following his guru, who was Lord Chaitanya's instructions. And he's like the perfect example of a Vaishnava. So he was born in 1488 and he disappeared on this day, 1558, which means he was 70 years old when he left. And he was born in a very high Brahmana family, and he had two brothers, Anupam and Rupa, Goswami, as we know. And he was they were staunch devotees, very dedicated, spontaneous devotees, right from when they were young, when they would go swimming, they would name the kunds, their favorite kunds, Radha Kund, Shama Kund. When they would go playing and having favorite places where they walked, they would call them the different names of the 12 forests of Vrindavan. And throughout their life, they maintained this. So this attraction, he had a very special attraction to Srimad Bhagavatam. He actually had a dream about Srimad Bhagavatam when he was young, and Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, became his greatest friend and his worshipful Lord. So he was a great logician, and he studied philosophy and rhetoric all his life. That was dear to him. So because Rupa and Sanatana were very qualified, intelligent, knew many languages and were brilliant, even though they were very young, the Nawab, the Muslim leader, decided that he needed them in his government. So he forced them by threats to family, etc., and they became his servants. And they took on Muslim names, but I believe those Muslim names were to do with the particular job they had. So they were kind of considered by the Brahmanas to be outcasts, and they took that on themselves very humbly, although we know they were very pure and they never lost any of their devotional habits because of their employment, but they took that, they didn't protest against the fact that they were considered outcasts. So it's described, he was a householder, and it's described that he had a boundless sense of charity. He was always wanting to give. And he studied under Vidya Vachaspati and various other august souls. And this Vidya Vachaspati was actually the brother of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So he was well taught. He was well studied anyway, and he was also well taught. So they knew about Lord Chaitanya, and they were very anxious to meet Lord Chaitanya, but they didn't know what to do because they had heard that he'd taken sannyas and gone to Puri. They were living in a place called Ramkeli in Bengal, and they were sort of tied down by their jobs. So they didn't know what to do. So their mother said to them, well, why don't you write a letter to Lord Chaitanya? So they wrote a letter, and they just said that they really wanted to commit themselves to him. And Lord Chaitanya wrote back, and he wrote what he said was that if a woman has a paramour, then she devotes herself very much to her household duties, but in her heart, she's always thinking of her paramour. So in other words, stay and do your duty, but your heart is connected. So that was his advice. Don't just run off. The time will come. So, so Lord Chaitanya came there to Ramkeli when Sanatana Goswami was 26 years of age. And when they met Lord Chaitanya, they were so humble, they took straws in their mouth and, offered obeisance from afar. And Lord Chaitanya, loved them because they're actually his eternal servants. So they had a wonderful meeting, and they understood that at this time the Lord would make all preparations for them to be able to take up his service, which is what happened. So, so when Rupa left to go to Vrindavan, he left a lot of money, 10,000 gold coins. Can you imagine? If you just have one gold coin, people are like, wow, you got one gold coin, those Krugerrands. They're worth a lot of money. So he had 10,000 gold coins, which he deposited with a merchant, trusty merchant. And when and Sanatana wanted to go too, so he didn't want to stay home. He didn't want to go into his work every day. He decided he was going to stay home. So he sent a message that he was unwell, and then he just stayed home. And all these exalted souls, he was just giving Bhagavatam classes, and all these exalted souls were coming to listen to Sanatana Goswami giving these Bhagavatam classes. And finally the Nawab came and said, he must have heard something. He came and he said, I don't think you're very sick. You don't look very sick. And when he said, I don't want to come anymore, he insisted he go into jail. So he was thrown in jail because he really valued, they were like the perfect employees. They had very high posts. Just forget what they were. Anyone remember what they were? Chief Minister and the second one. Okay, Anupam, the other brother. Right. Right. So they had big posts. So the Nawab was really upset to lose them. So poor old Sanatana Goswami ended up in jail. So then he knew of this money. Rupa wrote to him, you can do the needful with that money. And he offered the jailer, the Muslim jailer, 5,000 gold coins, which is a lot of money because he wouldn't have been getting much money as a salary. But he was too scared of the Nawab. So then Sanatana Goswami upped it to 7,000 gold coins, and he told him how he could do it because he was afraid what will happen. He said, you just say that you took me to the bank of the river to pass stool, and even in my shackles, I jumped in the water and I was taken off and I would have drowned. He said, I'll go to Mecca. I'll go to do a pilgrimage of Mecca, so you don't have to worry that you'll be caught because I'll be gone. So with the 7,000 in coins, the jailer agreed. And he let Sanatana Goswami go. So then to get to Vrindavan was difficult in those days. There were lots of, it was a long way to go, and there were lots of thieves and, rogues around who would attack pilgrims and stuff. So there was one particularly dangerous place in Bihar. They had to cross like mountainous hills. And they stopped in a hotel. Sanatan had a servant helping him called Ishan. They stopped in a hotel, and the hotel manager was very friendly to them. And actually what had happened was he had an astrologer. And the astrologer told him, this man here has 8 gold coins. So the hotel manager, being one of the rogues, decided he would kill them and take the money. So Sanatana Goswami was thinking about how friendly he was, and he was a diplomat, so he realized there's something going on. So he asked Ishan, do you have some coins on you? He said, yes, I have 7 gold coins. So he took those 7 gold coins and gave them to the hotel manager and said, please just give us safe passage. And then he sent Ishan back with that 1 coin that he knew he had, and off he went to Varanasi. So Lord Chaitanya was staying at Varanasi in the house of Chandrasekhar. And Lord Chaitanya, of course, while traveling through all this time, through some weeks of walking and traveling and staying under trees, and he had to go by a quiet road. So he was kind of disheveled and unkempt. So he sat outside Chandrasekhar's house, and Lord Chaitanya knew he was there, and he asked Chandrasekhar to go and bring in a devotee who was there. So when Chandrasekhar went out and saw Sanatana Goswami, he's like, no, there's nobody there. There's only he says, there's nobody there? He said, oh, there's only some unkempt Muslim, Mohammedan man there. He said, bring him in. So there was a wonderful meeting, and Lord Chaitanya there were tears, you know, they were embracing in tears. And Lord Chaitanya was so happy to see his beloved servant that he started actually, you know, wiping his body with his hand. And Sanatana Goswami was like, don't touch me, don't touch me. But Lord Chaitanya made some nice comments about a pure devotee. When he asked him, my Lord, please don't touch, Lord Chaitanya said, I am touching you just to purify myself. Through the force of your devotional service, you can purify the whole universe. And then he quoted a quote that Maharaj Yudhisthira had quoted to Vidura when Vidura had returned to see Maharaj Yudhisthira. He had quoted, saints of your caliber are themselves places of pilgrimage. So Lord Chaitanya quoted this to Sanatana Goswami, and that those saintly people revitalize the holy places. So, and then he said, by seeing you, by touching you, by glorifying your transcendental qualities, one can perfect oneself. And that's the tongue's real activity. So that's one of the reasons why we glorify these pure devotees, because it's the tongue's real activity. And because Lord Chaitanya said that this is, by doing this, I'm purifying myself. So when we glorify pure devotees to others, then Krishna becomes so pleased, and there's so much that happens within our hearts. So Sanatana Goswami, although he'd had such a celebrated position, he just wore old cloths, and he used to beg madhukari, just go around and beg chapati from 1 or 2 houses. And the only thing he had, his brother-in-law had given him a blanket on the travels. They'd met the brother-in-law, and he'd given him a nice blanket. And Lord Chaitanya kept on looking at that blanket. So Sanatana Goswami thought, whoops, I better get rid of this blanket. So he went to the Ganges and he swapped it with this very poor person who was there, and the poor man was thinking, oh, he's just teasing me, he's not going to give me this blanket. He said, no, really, I want to swap. And then Lord Chaitanya was very pleased, and he said, yes, if you're begging and doing madhukari, it's not appropriate for you to have some fine cloth. So then after that he had a torn quilt, and Lord Chaitanya was happy with that renunciation. So Sanatana Goswami, while he was there in Varanasi, he took advantage because Lord Chaitanya, the Supreme Lord, was there. So he took advantage to get instructions, and he placed a straw in his mouth. He was so humble. He was such an exalted soul, but he was very, very humble always. And he said to Lord Chaitanya, "Who am I? Why am I always affected by material miseries? What is my real duty?" So Lord Chaitanya then began to speak to Sanatana Goswami, and in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all these instructions are given. Well, it was 2 months, so maybe it was a synopsis. But these instructions are there, and if you can read them, they're wonderful. There's so much. I was thinking, oh, maybe I should just, give a synopsis. But the synopsis, there's so much there. Actually, it's 5 whole chapters. And in one of them, it's called The Opulence and Sweetness of Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya said to him, well, I didn't intend to tell you all this sweetness of Krishna, but it just came through. And so now I've given you this information. And then he taught him about, he said, Krishna bewildered me. I got carried away, and therefore I've given you this information. Then he gave the process of devotional service and life's ultimate goal. It's all there. It's fantastic. So because Sanatana Goswami, he wanted him to write all these things down, which he did. And therefore, it was important that he understood everything perfectly. And this was their chance to have that stiksha between, from Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami. So then Sanatana Goswami at the end said, I pray to you, please let all those instructions come in my heart. Because you can hear things with your head, but Sanatana Goswami knew it had to come from the heart. So Lord Chaitanya then put his hand on his head, and he had Sanatana had said to Lord Chaitanya, I'm asking you to please say, let all these instructions be manifest in Sanatana's heart. So then Lord Chaitanya did exactly that, put his hand on his head, and he said, let all these instructions be manifested in Sanatana's heart. So he became like the reservoir of love of Godhead, Sanatana Goswami, due to Lord Chaitanya's mercy. So the last thing he asked was, last thing he asked about was, I heard that you taught the Atmarama verse, explaining about the Atmarama verse, that you gave 18 different translations of this Atmarama verse. Could you please repeat that for me? So Lord Chaitanya started talking about this Atmarama verse, but he gave more than 18. He gave 64 different meanings of the Atmarama verse. So Sanatana Goswami was duly, completely gobsmacked and impressed. So then they had a massive Sankirtan, and Lord Chaitanya went to Puri. And Sanatana Goswami so much wanted to go to Puri, but Lord Chaitanya said, no, I need you to go to Vrindavan. So Sanatana Goswami went to Vrindavan, but he actually didn't stay there long. He went through the 12 forests, and then he went to Puri. And he had to walk such a long way. And as he was going through the Jarikanda forest, he was remembering all Lord Chaitanya's pastimes through that forest, where Lord Chaitanya had, made the animals dance. And there were so many different pastimes in the Jarikanda forest. So he was relishing all that. But he wasn't able to eat properly, and the water he drank was bad. And he ended up getting this eczema, this itching eczema, and actually the sores were oozing. So by the time he got to Puri finally, he was, thinking, I can't maintain this body. When Rath Yatra comes, I'm going to jump under the wheel, get rid of this disgusting body. And he was always trying to avoid Lord Chaitanya, so Lord Chaitanya wouldn't embrace his oozy body. And of course, Lord Chaitanya didn't mind at all. So then Sanatana went to Jagannananda Pandit and said, what am I going to do? I've got this oozing, disgusting sores, and, it's not nice. He said, Jagannananda, why don't you go to Vrindavan? Go to Vrindavan, back to Vrindavan. So then Lord Chaitanya asked him about Jagannananda, about that. And he said, yes, I told him to go to Vrindavan. He said, why are you instructing Sanatana? He's senior to you, and he's much more learned. And he said, no, actually, the body of my pure devotee is never going to cause me distress. So then later on he embraced Sanatana Goswami and all those sores. Oh, he did say to Sanatana, why do you want to commit suicide? Do you think you can attain Krishna by committing suicide? And he said, your body belongs to me. It's my body. I've got service that I want you to do. So therefore, you can't kill that body. It belongs to me. And he embraced Sanatana and everything became nice. So Sanatana Goswami had a lot of association with Haridas Thakur there, because Haridas Thakur lived in a hut by the beach and Sanatana stayed with him. And Lord Chaitanya would go and see them every day. And then after 1 year, he sent him back to Vrindavan. So when he went to Vrindavan, he had several tasks. Let me find those tasks. Yes. I want you to preach. Go to Vrindavan. I want you to preach. I want you to excavate the holy places there. I want you to install deities. And I want you to write transcendental literature. So when Sanatana Goswami went to Vrindavan, he traveled all through Vrindavan, staying under a different bush or a different tree every night. He didn't have a fixed residence. And we know that when the Goswamis actually were sent there, there was nothing. There were just, farmland. There were no temples there. So all those places that had been where the gopis, the gopas, Nanda Maharaj, they'd become covered. Nobody knew where they were. So the Goswamis, as they travelled around under the different trees, they could see what pastimes occurred there, because they're desire trees, so they would let them know what had happened there. So all those Leela sthanas became discovered by Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami. That was what Lord Chaitanya wanted. So, by the way, he didn't sleep very long under those trees, an hour and a half. That's all the sleep he had. And the rest of the time he wrote and discussed and chanted, talked about Krishna. He was absorbed completely. So also eating was very little. He would beg some wheat, he would get some Jamuna water, roll it up and throw it in the fire, cook it, and that was it. So he lived such a simple life. But he did want to worship Krishna, like in the deity form, because Lord Chaitanya had told them they should do that. So one time when he was going to a householder's house, he saw that inside they had this beautiful deity, gorgeous deity, and the son was playing with the deity. But, they were kind of like, they had this relationship of friendship. And the whole family had this sort of parental, with the mother and father, and the sons, the two sons, they had this friendship relationship with the deity. So Lord Chaitanya really thought she was very beautiful, and, he kind of was very attracted immediately. Of course, it's Madan Mohan, so, the very name means the attractor of Cupid. So that night he had a dream, and so did the wife of, the mother. And in that dream, Sanatana Goswami was told that, I want you to worship me. So he went back the next day and, they handed over the deity. And Prabhupada explains that he would just, maybe he had them in a bag, sometimes around his neck, and he would just hang Madan Mohan on the tree. And then he would offer these balls, these so-called chapatis. And Madan Mohan one day said to him, Sanatana, can you not give me a little salt? And Sanatana Goswami says, Sir, what can I do? I am mendicant. You please just accept. So he could speak with the deity. So because Sanatana Goswami knew that Madan Mohan wanted more worship by that exchange, then he was thinking, I've got nothing, how can I worship? And So the Lord made an arrangement that there was a very wealthy merchant called Krishnadas Kapoor who brought his ship down the Jamuna River to Mathura, but it got stuck on a sandbank in Vrindavan. And when he came off the ship, he was very perturbed. He had this ship with what was going to happen. So Sanatana Goswami took him to his hut, because once he got Madan Mohan, he came across to the present Madan Mohan temple, and that's where he was staying with the deity. So he brought this gentleman, that's right by where the Jamuna used to flow. He brought this gentleman to his hut, and that gentleman is holding me pray to Madan Mohan. So that gentleman, he was a Vaishnava, he prayed to Madan Mohan to please rescue his ship. And then that afternoon there were torrents of rain and the ship lifted, and so the merchant was very grateful. And by chance he was a salt merchant. So I wonder if Krishna was telling Sanatana Goswami something. And he was very grateful, so he made a good profit from the sales, and he brought back the money and he built the Madan Mohan temple, which is still there. And if you go to Vrindavan, you can see that beautiful temple, right, where the Jamuna used to flow, up on the hill. Fantastic. And I read also that Srila Prabhupada, in his householder days, he went there and he was there for a couple of days as a householder. And the whole time, the whole day, he stayed at that Madan Mohan temple and he chanted all day long. Didn't go on parikram, just chanted at Madan Mohan temple. So very potent, because it's described that the three phases of developing love of God. So the first one is you have to be attracted to God, and that's the Sambandha stage. So Madan Mohan tip is the sort of epitome of that. He embodies that attraction to Krishna. When we get the attraction, and then we start our devotional service. So that's Madan Mohan, very important. Oh, and also he'll help us to overcome our attraction for sense gratification. So very important deity. So through Sanatana Goswami, today's the day we can pray to Sanatana Goswami for these things, to get that attraction and to have that desire for sense gratification removed. So he was very much loved by the Brijbasis. It's described that he and Rupa also, they were just so friendly with the Brijbasis. They would talk to them about their children, their marriage problems, if they had quarrels. They'd talk to them about their crops. Whatever was going, they were very friendly and they were very much loved by the Brijbasis. And actually on this day, many Brijbasis, still to this day, they shave their head. In those times when your father died, you'd shave your head. There's that lovely picture of Srila Prabhupada when he's got a shaved head after his father died. So on this day in Vrindavan, there's many people who shave their head because the Brijbasis just loved Sanatana Goswami. So he wandered around Vrindavan for 43 years. But in later years, he lived at Manasa Ganga and near the Chakaleshwar deity, Chakaleshwar Mahadev deity. So it's interesting for me because the other day in our fourth canto Bhagavatam Badi, that we do a verse every day, the purport was about Lord Shiva telling a Brahmin how he's easily pleased. A Brahmin came to him and he told that Brahmin, you should go to Sanatana Goswami if you want your desires fulfilled. So the story is that he went to Sanatana Goswami and Sanatana Goswami said to him, oh yes, I can fulfill your desires. You go over there to the rubbish area and you'll find a touchstone. So this Brahmin got this touchstone and he was ecstatic and off he went. Then he got out the door and he thought, oh, hang on, why is he keeping this in the rubbish? So he went back to Sanatana Goswami and said, hang on, you must have something greater, because he said, I do have something greater, but if you want to have that, then you have to give this up, and you'll need to throw it in the water. So he threw it in the water, came back, he said, and then he gave him the Maha Mantra in his ear. So he got the greatest treasure, which we have, by the way, greater than any touchstone. We have the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So one other thing and I was thinking at the time, I was wondering, how come Lord Shiva would send this Brahmin to Sanatana Goswami? But it's because Sanatana Goswami was just there nearby in his kutir. And another thing, Lord Shiva personally came to Sanatana Goswami one time when he was just over being bitten by mosquitoes, and he thought, I'm going mad, I can't do my writing, I can't do my chanting properly, there's so many mosquitoes, and I'm going somewhere else. So Lord Shiva came and said, why do you want to go? He said, I can't tolerate the mosquitoes. He said, you stay here, there'll be no more mosquitoes. And all the mosquitoes were gone. So there is a relationship there with Lord Shiva, Sanatana Goswami, because we know Lord Shiva is protecting the holy dharmas. Okay, so yes, and for 26 years, every single day, Sanatana Goswami walked around Govardhana Puja. And when his body became aged, he was in his 60s and still he was determined, then the Lord came to him and he said, Sanatana, you have an old body now, you don't have to do this going around Govardhana Hill. And he said, no, I've taken a vow, I must do it. I'm not going to give up my vow. So then the Lord stood on one of the rocks from Lord Giriraj, and he played his beautiful flute. So from that rock melted with the beauty of Krishna's flute, and the footprints of Krishna came there. So then Krishna took that Giriraj rock with the imprint of his lotus feet and said, okay, this is from Lord Giriraj, you walk around there and you've done your parikram. So that rock you can still see, it's in the Radha Damodar temple, and you can ask, they will show you that Giriraj with the lotus feet imprints that Sanatana was worshipping and circumambulating in his older age. So Sanatana Goswami did a lot of writing, and his books were the Hari Bhakti Vilas, the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which I know some devotees are reading now, the Brihad Vaishnava Toshani, and the Dasharama Tipani. That's a commentary on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the pastimes of Lord Krishna, he wrote a beautiful book, I haven't read it myself, where he deeply goes into the pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto, Sanatana Goswami. So he had a very prolific pen. So one time he was at Radhakund, and he was speaking to Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami was also writing, and they would show each other their writings, So Rupa Goswami showed something he had written, some verses he'd written, and he'd written a description of Radharani where her black braid looked like a snake. And Sanatana Goswami said, I don't think that's very appropriate, that her braid looks like a snake. And then he went to Radhakund to take his midday bath. And on the other side, he could see some cowherd girls, and they were playing. And then he saw what he thought, because it was, across the way, what he thought was from a tree, a snake coming down one of the gopis' bodies. And he was calling out, oh, Lali, Lali, watch out, watch out. And, they were playing and they didn't hear. So he started to run. He ran all the way around Radhakund. And when he got in front near the girls, they all were laughing at him, and then they disappeared. So he realized, oh my gosh, that was Radharani. And he thought, I shouldn't have criticized Rupa Goswami's description because it really looked like a snake. So some other little pastimes were oh yes, then he went into, after that he went to Pavan Sarovar and he went inside the forest and he went into a very deep meditation. Having seen that, it was pretty amazing. He went into a deep meditation and he wasn't eating or he wasn't sleeping. And then suddenly this cowherd boy came and he had a pot of milk. And he said, oh, I saw that you were not eating or drinking, so I brought this pot of milk. And he said, how did you know? He said, oh, well, I was looking after my cows and I was watching you, so you please take it. And he said, oh, quickly, I'll transfer it into something and give you a pot back. He said, no, it's okay. It's evening time now. I have to go and look after my cows, bring the cows for milking. Don't worry. So then that boy disappeared and he realized, gosh, Krishna came. I shouldn't fast. I should go do Madhukari and so that I don't have to bother Krishna. And they didn't want Krishna to serve them, but Krishna is always looking out for his pure devotees. And then one other time, Rupa Goswami he just had this really strong desire to make some beautiful sweet rice for Sanatana Goswami. He really revered his elder brother. And the interesting thing is that in the spiritual world, Sanatana Goswami is Rati Manjari, or Labanga Manjari, as is sometimes called. And those two are like best friends. They're always together. But when they came in that life as Sanatana and Rupa, because Sanatana was the elder brother, Rupa Goswami was so respectful, always, all through his life, he was so respectful to his brother. And I think it was 1 year after Sanatana Goswami left on this day that Rupa Goswami left. It was very much in separation. So he was thinking about this sweet rice and he thought, well, I haven't got any ingredients or anything. And next morning, knock, knock, knock at his little shanty. And there's this beautiful cowherd girl and she had a tray and she had milk and rice and saffron and sugar. So she said, oh, I thought you could use this. And so Rupa was very happy. Oh, it was Rupa, sorry. So Rupa was very happy. He took it, he made this sweet rice, and then he took it to Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami was tasting this sweet rice, and he was just, this is so nectarian. Where did you get the ingredients? And he said, well, I was thinking about it, and then there's this someone came and gave me a beautiful cowherd girl, and he said, oh, don't ever desire to do that for me again. We don't want Radharani to serve us. So then they realized, because he said, it's so good, it's out of this world. So he knew, Srimati Radharani. So they had this wonderful mood. They were always so humble and always just simply wanting to serve and so magnanimous. And that's how pure devotees, that's the magnanimity of pure devotees. So I just wanted to read 4 verses at the end of all these chapters that you can read, chapter 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 in the Madhya Lila. At the end it says, the authorized poet Kavi Karnapura has written a book named Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natika. And this book tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu blessed Sanatana Goswami with his specific mercy. And these are the verses. Srila Sanatana Goswami, the elder brother of Sri Rupa Goswami, was a most important minister in the government of Hussain Shah, the ruler of Bengal, and he was considered a most brilliant gem in that assembly. He possessed all the opulences of a royal position, but he gave up everything just to accept the youthful goddess of renunciation. Although he externally appeared to be a mendicant who had renounced everything, he was filled with the pleasure of devotional service within his heart. Thus he can be compared to a deep lake covered with moss. He was the object of pleasure for all the devotees who knew the science of devotional service. And the next one, As soon as Sanatana Goswami arrived in front of Lord Chaitanya, the Lord, seeing him, became merciful to him. The Lord, who has a complexion of a golden champak flower, opened his arms and embraced him while expressing great affection. In the course of time, the transcendental news of Krishna's pastimes of Vrindavan was almost lost. To enunciate explicitly those transcendental pastimes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag empowered Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami with the nectar of his mercy to carry out this work in Vrindavan. And there's one more thing that it states in the Gaura Ganadesha Deepika, which I never noticed before, that the Sanat Kumar, who was, the four Kumaras, well, was it Sanat or Sanatan? Sanatan Kumar, who was a great Vaishnava sage, he entered into the body of Sanatana Goswami. So we know that he was Rati Manjari, but also he had Sanatan Kumar there. So he's a very glorious soul, and we can just appreciate how wonderful these Goswamis are, and yet we have their books and we have the treasure, the same treasure that they had, the Maha Mantra, we have devotional service. So in our fallen state, we can pray to them to get a pure heart so that all these wonderful pastimes will become manifested in our hearts as well. Jai Srila Sanatana Goswami ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.